Okay, let's dive right into this. We're going to unpack a universal, kind of terrifying human experience today in this explainer. That feeling of existential dread as time just seems to evaporate. The older you get, the faster time flies, right? But here's the secret. The universe isn't actually spinning any faster. Today we're going to look at the exact mechanisms your mind uses to process time, and way more importantly, how you can actually take control of them.
I mean, think back to when you were a kid. Do you remember the agonizing wait for your 7th birthday? Or how a 2-month summer vacation felt like an absolute eternity where you basically lived entire lifetimes? When you're a child, time is just this massive ocean. You built forts, explored new neighborhoods, and honestly felt like a completely different person by the time August rolled around.
Now contrast that childhood ocean of time with adulthood. You blink and suddenly it's Thanksgiving. You're celebrating New Year's Eve, and seemingly moments later, you're complaining about stores putting up Halloween decorations already. Entire years just seem to evaporate, leaving almost no trace. And it happens because your brain, not the universe, but your brain is playing a massive trick on you.
Which brings us to Section 1, the math of aging. To really understand this broken perception, we first need to look at the cold, hard mathematics of human memory. It's called the proportional theory. A philosopher named Paul Janet introduced this way back in 1877, and it shows that we experience time logarithmically, not linearly. So humans don't measure time ticking steadily away, 1 second per second. Instead, we measure the passage of time relative to the total amount of time we've already accumulated on Earth.
Let's put that into perspective. When you're 5 years old, one single year contains a massive 20% of all the memories and experiences you have ever known. That single year holds 20% of your entire existence. All your joy, all your pain. Proportionally speaking, it's an incredibly heavy, dense chunk of your life. But jump forward to age 50. Suddenly, a year is just 2% of your life. Mathematically, that feels exactly like 36 days feels to a 5-year-old. The fraction shrinks dramatically. That little sliver of a year barely makes a dent in the grand total of a 50-year-old's lived experience. So the crucial point here is this deeply unsettling truth. Based on this math, the subjective halfway point of your perceived life is somewhere between ages 7 and 10. Literally, let that sink in for a second. Because we perceive time logarithmically, by the time you blew out the candles on your 10th birthday, you would likely already experience half of your subjective perception of time. Crazy, right?
All right, moving on to Section 2, the brain on autopilot.
Don't panic just yet, because the math is only half the story. The real culprit is actually how your brain encodes video data. Think of your brain as a video camera. It records hyper-focused childhood novelty at, say, 120 frames per second. But it drops down to a measly 5 frames per second when processing boring adult routines. When you're young, the environment is full of unfamiliar data. New tastes, new words, new everything. Your brain goes into hyperfocus to capture it all. But as an adult, the world kind of loses its novelty. The key mechanism behind this is called synaptic pruning. It explains exactly why your brain refuses to record your drive to work for the 500th time. You wake up at the same time, talk to the same coworkers, watch the same shows. Your brain wants to save energy, so it switches to autopilot, compresses all that familiar data, and literally just stops recording.
And this perfectly explains the holiday paradox. When you force your brain off autopilot to navigate, let's say, a new country, it records massive amounts of data that stretch your perception of the past. During the trip itself, it flies by because you're having fun. But when you get home and look back, it feels like you were gone for a month. That's because your brain had to navigate new streets, process new languages, and take in a ton of new data.
Which brings us to Section 3, the infinite scroll trap.
Unfortunately, without new, distinct memories, your brain groups identical days into one giant blurry folder. And this introduces us to the ultimate 21st century time accelerator. When you sit and scroll for 3 hours, you enter what we call a time void. You experience dopamine stimulation, sure, but you retain absolutely zero data on your internal hard drive. The physical environment around you is completely static. You're just sitting on a couch staring at a glowing rectangle. So your brain encodes absolutely no episodic memories. Look at this number, because it's genuinely shocking. If you spend 4 hours a day on your phone, you are actively erasing over 60 full days from your perceived year. 2 whole months. You experience the stimulation in the moment, but you keep none of the data. You put the phone down, feeling like maybe 5 minutes have passed, completely unable to recall a single meaningful thing you just watched.
Because you have no new memories to anchor your timeline to, you get trapped in a biological fast-forward where routine completely destroys your lifespan. Your brain literally hits the fast-forward button on your existence because, well, it has nothing new to hold on to. It just groups the last 5 years of identical days into one single highly compressed file folder.
So what do we do about it? Section 4, How to Slow Time. You can't change the mathematics of aging. That's a given. But you can absolutely hack the neuroscience of memory to turn the camera back on. In this explainer, we've broken down a simple 3-step approach to inject novelty and presence back into your life to actively slow down time. If routine and digital numbness speed time up, then novelty and presence are your ultimate tools to slow it back down. Let's walk through these steps.
Step 1 is the power of firsts. Break autopilot with simple, unfamiliar stimuli. Try brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand. It sounds silly, but it forces your brain to start recording at 120 frames per second again. You don't need to quit your job and move to the Himalayas to do this. Just drive a different route to work or go to a restaurant you've never been to and order something you can't even pronounce. Your weeks will instantly start feeling longer.
Step 2 requires you to enter the stretch zone. Become a beginner at something again. Creating steep learning curves floods your brain with thick, new neural connections, inducing a state called neuroplasticity. Time literally slows down when we're learning. The steeper the learning curve, the thicker the memory encoding, and the longer the year will feel in retrospect. Seriously, do not let your brain get comfortable.
And step 3 is spatial anchoring. Prevent your brain from blending the whole year into one room by forcing it to take a high-definition photograph of the present moment, without a screen. Your brain heavily ties memory to physical locations. If you work from home, eat at home, and relax at home, it all just blends together. Get out and go for a walk. Actually taste the bitterness of your morning coffee and consciously feel the warmth of the mug in your hands.
Ultimately, time is a blank canvas, and your memories are the paint. Time is the ultimate equalizer, and while you cannot stop the sand from falling, you definitely don't have to let your life become a compressed, blurry file folder. It is the only currency you can never, ever earn back. If you live exactly like you did yesterday, tomorrow will simply disappear. But remember, time is not a relentless enemy.
So I'll leave you with this. How will you paint your time today? Seek out the uncomfortable, break your routine, and ask yourself how deeply you are willing to feel the chaos of the real world today. You cannot stop the sand from falling, but you can absolutely choose how deeply you feel each grain. Put down the screen, make your brain work, and take back control of your timeline.